Greetings guys, gals, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. Something that has been around for forever, but is extra prominent right now, I'm finding, is diet culture. It goes through a lot of shifts and ebbs and flows. The female body in particular goes through a lot of trends in the way that it's supposed to look, and it is all just a thing of nightmares, right? Terrible in every single possible way, and we are all impacted in different ways. And outside of society dictating what our bodies should look like and telling us what we should or shouldn't be eating, a lot of people are also suffering from that pressure and that conversation inside of their own households. There are a lot of people who suffer at the hands of their parents pushing this diet culture onto them because, you know, our parents also grew up in a world with diet culture, and it may have looked different then than it does now, but diet culture is diet culture, right? And a lot of parents have eating disorders that they do not want to confront or deal with, and instead of processing and accepting that fact, they instead continue that cycle and put their struggles onto their children. Those parents we call almond parents. Usually it is almond moms because we are more directly targeted. However, there are also men, obviously, who are impacted by diet culture as well, and almond dads are also a thing that exists. And I have made a couple of videos talking about this topic before. However, with this increase in diet culture that I am seeing, and with the fact that I have just gone home and spent time with my own family, this is very fresh on my mind at the moment. And so I really wanted to sit down and talk about it again. I also am planning on doing a video about diet culture and the rise of eating disorder culture and stuff at a later point as well. So hold on for that as well, because I cannot fit it all into one video. I would like to first put a disclaimer and a trigger warning on this video. So the trigger warning is for eating disorders. We will be talking about diet culture and eating disorders, etc., obviously. So if that is going to be triggering for you, please feel free to skip this one and come back for the next one. I am hoping that, you know, although some of the content that these people are going to be sharing and things that they're saying, I'm able to have conversations that will be more helpful and uplifting than anything. But I understand if the conversation in general is too much for you, that is fine. I will see you next time. And the disclaimer I want to give is the one that I always give for these videos, which is that I am aware that the parents that I'm about to talk to, they suffer with eating disorders of some variety, right? Whether it is anorexia, orthorexia, more commonly, they are suffering from some type of eating disorder. And that is a really horrible and difficult thing to be dealing with. I am someone who has struggled with an eating disorder for over a decade. I was in therapy for a long time for it. It's horrible. It is terrible. I would not wish an eating disorder upon my worst enemy. And so I do not want it to come across as though I am making fun of these people or, you know, being mad at them for having eating disorders. I know it's not easy to overcome, and I don't think it is a laughing matter. I do, however, think that you as a parent have a responsibility to not make your mental health issues the problem of your children, right? I think that as a parent, you have a responsibility to keep your child's best interest in mind. And even if you are struggling and suffering, that is no excuse to then continue that and make your child suffer. If you are going to be a parent, you have to acknowledge what you are dealing with and work to heal, because it is not fair to put a child through that. So basically, having an eating disorder is a reason for how these people are acting, but it is not an excuse, right? And I can feel sympathy for these people for struggling with something so terrible and still be upset that they are doing that. And their children who suffer at their hands do not owe them forgiveness for that. You can acknowledge that someone is struggling whilst also not liking the way they treat you because of it, right? There's a line there. And I just want to be clear that I understand these people are struggling and I do sympathize with them. And it also doesn't excuse their behavior. Now that that is out of the way, let's get into it and have a bit of a discussion about what these almond parents are doing and how it impacts their children and so on and so forth. So there are a couple of different categories for almond parents to fall into. There is category 1, where they are directly targeting their child, making their diet, culture, their eating disorders, their rules, their child's problem, and like putting that on them very, very literally, and like telling them they have to follow these specific rules, and like commenting on what they're eating, and like making it apparent that they have to follow their parents' strict diet rules. And then the other category 2, is it being more broad in general, right? It's like not forcing your child into sharing the same eating patterns as you, but openly speaking about your own eating patterns to a point where it's being ingrained in your child subconsciously. And those are bad in 2 different ways, and I want to talk about them separately. So we are going to first start with type 1, the parents who push it onto their children deliberately and want their kids to live this miserable life of an eating disorder because misery likes company, right? So this is just someone who posted a video of their dad that just says, "My dad, after saying you shouldn't be eating all that bread," and saying his breakfast is a single date. And that has 100,000 likes. And then there's also this one of, "Your almond dad packed your lunch for a 10-hour workday, and it is a mandarin and like a muesli bar and then some cashews, and that's it. That's the food that he has given his child for a 10-hour day." And I have a bigger example of this that I want to share that I will come back to at the end, because it is a part of a very long TikTok that I want to dissect in its entirety. But for now, this is sort of what I am getting at, right? It is the parents who make their issues your problem. They are projecting their own views on food onto their children, right? And I know that these kids who are making these videos are not children anymore, but I doubt that it was very different when they were growing up. And regardless, there is a lot of other evidence and videos and things of parents doing this to their kids who are kids. So, you know, they're just not posting about it on TikTok because they're still at the point of their lives where they don't realize that it's abnormal. To this, I have to say, like why, right? Like, especially to that first one, right? Why are you eating all that bread? Do you really have to be eating all that bread? Like, why does it matter to you? Why is it any of your business? Why do you feel the need to comment on what someone else is eating? Does it really make you feel better about yourself? Does it make you feel better about yourself to look at someone and then shame them for what they're eating? If she is hungry, she's allowed to eat bread. She's allowed to eat whatever she wants. She's listening to her body. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that, and has absolutely nothing to do with you. And this is a problem with like parents who do this when their kids are growing up, right? Like their kids are hungry and they will go and get a snack, and it's their parents being like, "Why are you snacking? Dinner's in 3 hours. You're gonna spoil your appetite. Dinner's in 3 hours. That's so soon. You shouldn't be eating a piece of bread." Yeah? And commenting on what someone is eating in any sort of negative way of being like, "You shouldn't be eating that. Are you sure you should be having that? You shouldn't eat because you've got to eat later. You've already eaten too much." Anything directed at someone about what they're eating in this sort of manner that has a lot of like forced shame in it, all it is doing is forcing your kid to have a bad relationship with food. And that is never a good thing. Like, you are not benefiting from that at all. And your kid certainly isn't at all. Especially when they are like younger and still developing a relationship with food and learning about their body and how it works, right? Because your kid is hungry, you should encourage them to eat something because they're hungry, and it is important to listen to your body. It is really important to teach your kids to listen to their body and do what it is asking of them, right? That doesn't mean necessarily every time they say, "I'm hungry," you go and get them like a bag of crisps and, you know, just throw any food at them, because that isn't going to fill that like hole, that like nutritional hole that they might have. That's the reason that they're hungry. Occasionally, yes, a packet of crisps or something is like perfectly fine for what they want, but potentially, you know, they're hungry because they haven't had enough protein or they haven't had enough fiber. They like are lacking in a certain, you know, vitamin or something. And so their body is telling them that they need something, and they have to learn how to listen to that, and you have to help them in listening to that. And by denying them of eating what they feel like and like what their body is telling them that they are needing, and by telling them to ignore their hunger signals, you are just creating a bad relationship with themselves and their body, and they aren't going to be listening to their body. They aren't going to recognize what their body is telling them. They aren't going to feel comfortable asking for food or getting food, and they are going to just be hungry when they don't have to be hungry. You should be teaching intuitive eating. You should be like listening to what your body is saying, and it doesn't do anyone any favors to teach your kids the opposite of that, right? All you're doing is creating shame around food, and there is absolutely nothing shameful about food. There is nothing shameful about eating when you are hungry. There is nothing shameful about eating a lot of carbs. Like, sometimes that's what you want. Let people live, especially when they are growing. The problem with shame around food and enforcing this shame and teaching your kids to like not listen to their bodies and to ignore hunger signals and anything like that is that it is building the foundations of an eating disorder, both restrictive eating disorders and binge eating disorders. It is building the foundation for both of those things to grow. It is building the foundation of a restrictive eating disorder because it is teaching shame around eating. It is teaching you that eating is bad. It is teaching you that you have to eat at like very specific times, very specific amounts, very specific things. Like in this example, it's effectively teaching bread bad, bread shame, right? And so it is teaching all these rules that then they feel as though they have to follow. And as you set more and more rules, they become stricter and stricter in holding on to them. Right? Eating disorders start small and then they get bigger. It starts with one thing and it's like, oh, bread is bad. And then it extends out into being like, well, if bread is bad, then this carb is bad and this is bad and this is bad. And it kind of just grows. You set rules and you're like, oh, well, I achieved that. So now I can like step it up. I can do the next thing. So it's, you know, like if you end up calorie counting, it's like, oh, well, I'm doing X amount of calories today, so I may as well do less tomorrow. Oh, and then I can do less than that. Let's challenge myself. Let's do less. And it works in the same way with rules such as this. You are like setting this foundation of like some foods are bad and that list is going to grow. And then they're restricting and it's dangerous. And then on the other side, it is building the foundation of a binge eating disorder in the same way by using shame. It is teaching you that if you want to eat these things, you have to hide it. It has to be done in secret. So it is teaching these kids to like follow the rules, but then to like get junk food and all this like bad food and then eat it all and then hide it. It's hoarding food. It's hiding food. It's eating in secret. And that's like feeling so much shame around something that is so normal. And that is bad in a separate way. You should not be feeling shameful about food. You should not feel like you have to hide food. You should not feel like any food is like bad and forbidden, right? Setting these rules is just building people up into breaking them and then feeling bad about breaking them. Shame is not a good emotion to be instilling in people, especially not when it comes to something necessary like food. There's this example of someone that posted on TikTok, and she is an example of this where it says, POV, you grew up in an almond family and still hide your bad food wrappers to avoid their comments, right? And I'm not saying necessarily that she has binge eating disorder, but I am saying that if there is shame associated with food to the point where you feel like you have to hide it, that is disordered in some type of way, right? Because there is shame and there shouldn't be shame around something so normal. And especially if it's been ingrained in you to like hide food because you feel afraid of what people are going to say to you. That's horrible. That's just such a terrible, terrible thing. And who is it benefiting? The thing is, if you set rules for your kids and you don't tell them why they're there, or you don't give them like reason that like makes sense or like speaks to them, they're going to break those rules and then they're going to be afraid, or they're going to hide it, or they're going to feel shame. Like, it destroys trust, and it also just like creates not only a bad relationship between your child and like a very necessary function, but also it creates a bad relationship between you and your child because it gets rid of this like element of trust because they don't understand why you've set this rule. And that's fair enough because it's a stupid rule. You know, setting rules with no solid reason or a reason that your child doesn't understand, and you haven't given them any reason to understand other than like, I say so, especially if it's causing them emotional distress, it's just adding misery for the sake of adding misery. Because if you have rules, they are going to be broken. That is just how it works. When there are rules with no foundation, the rules are broken, and then it's punishment for rules that they don't even understand why they're rules in the first place. And this is something that just happens in general with eating disorders, even with your own eating disorder. That is kind of just how they function. Eating disorders are all about control, right? So they are about control. They are about rules. It comes with a lot of breaking rules and a lot of guilt and shame and punishment. And that is something that if you suffer from an eating disorder of any variety, like, you understand. And that is how you know that like these parents are just forcing that onto their kids and they are being the punisher that they are also for themselves. And I just don't think it's a good thing at all to punish your children just because you are punishing yourself. To explain what I mean about the cycle of eating disorders and the rules and rule breaking, it is one of the first things I learned when I started DBT specialized for eating disorders. And that was the cycle, which is set rule, break rule, punishment. And then it just kind of like went around and around in circles. So, you know, it could look like any number of things. Could be like you restrict, and because you restrict for so long, then eventually you break, you binge, and then you punish yourself in whatever form that looks like. It can look like a whole range of different things. Or it could just be like you have a specific rule of like no sugar, and then you eat sugar, and because you ate sugar, you punish yourself in one way or another. And it just kind of repeats, and it's misery either way. You're miserable living under these like really strict rules that exist, and then you are miserable when you break those rules. There is no escape. This cycle is a prison. Enforcing that onto your child is just so cruel, and I don't know why anyone would want to do that. I do not understand why anyone would want to do that. This is something that like never makes sense to me, and it confuses me so much. And this will come up in a minute again anyway, but like I have never understood the people who, you know, suffer with an eating disorder of any sort or like any sort of anything, and to make themselves feel better, they then put that on other people, or they think that passing that on to other people is going to be the key to their happiness as a way to like make themselves feel better. They're like, oh, if I give this to someone else because it makes me happy, it makes them happy, like deluding themselves into thinking that what they're doing is actually good for them. Like when I was in the depth of my eating disorder, I knew it was making me miserable. I knew it was bad for me. I knew that I was suffering, but I wanted to do it anyway. But I never ever for a moment wished it upon anyone else. And I know that people who are suffering with eating disorders are conscious of the pain that they are in and the misery that they are feeling, because it comes with like so many horrible desires and fantasies and, you know, thoughts. There's a lot in there that's just an absolute nightmare, and you are so aware of it. And so it's never made sense to me that people then want to pass that on to other people, and they create these like spaces where they're like, let's encourage each other. I'm gonna help you. I want other people to suffer with me. And it makes even less sense when that person you are bringing into it is your child. Like, I just do not understand. It is so beyond me as to why you would want to put that on anyone else. I don't understand. Anyway, back to the main thing of what I was saying. It is so important to understand and accept that there is such thing as balance. You don't have to have such strict black and white rules. You know, if you have rules of like no crisps, then when you break that, you're going to punish yourself. Whereas if you have the idea that like, you know, you don't eat crisps every single meal, every single day. Like you're not eating like 2 bags of crisps. You know, like if you have sort of this balance and you're eating a variety of things and you are meeting all your nutritional needs, and that can include anything, right? You don't have to cut anything out and you can still be healthy. You then don't have any rules to break, and then you aren't punishing yourself. Not only are you not denying yourself of something that potentially brings you joy, but also there is nothing you could do food that means you have to suffer. Like, you do not have to punish yourself for anything. There is no strict rule that you have to follow. And once you realize that, your life will become so much better and so much more free. Another example of this like rule setting, rule breaking cycle that I want to share, just because I think that it'll seem very familiar to a lot of people because of how normalized it has been and how prevalent it is amongst these types of parents as well. And a lot of you, I'm sure, grew up with this in your household, which is the bulimia cycle. And that is restrict, binge, purge. Or you don't even necessarily need the restrict part for it to be bulimia, but it is typically like you'll have some food rule. You'll break the food rule. You'll binge, you'll purge. And a binge can look like anything to any person. Like, a binge obviously has a definition of it being a very large amount of food, but a lot of people use the word binge very loosely, and you can tell how much they suffer with a restrictive eating disorder based on what they consider a binge, right? Like, what they consider is enough for them to purge. And like, I look back at when I was a teenager and my definition of what a binge, and I'm like, that's incredibly depressing, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a binge, but that person will feel as though it was. And a way you may be more familiar with this cycle is restrict, binge, exercise. It is the people who will, eat a slice of cake and go, oh, I have to now walk for an hour to walk that off. Oh, I've got to go to the gym tomorrow because I just had dessert. It's the people who, you have Christmas dinner because it was just Christmas. So for example, there's a big Christmas dinner, and then they're like, I'm going on a juice cleanse for the next 2 weeks. I'm starting working out vigorously tomorrow, and for the next 10 days I'm in the gym every day. I'm eating super healthy. I'm doing this and this because I just ate one big dinner. That is the same cycle. That is the like bulimia cycle, right? It is the I put too much food in my body and now I have to expel it out. It doesn't have to be through like self-induced vomiting. It can be through exercise as well, or other people use like laxatives and things like that. The tummy tea or whatever, right? Like that kind of thing. Yeah. And this is especially a problem in situations where, like I said, a lot of you are probably familiar with this in your households. I know so many people who experience this in their households, and I wasn't exempt from this either. And it's so much worse when the parents also like turn it on you as well. You have like a big Christmas dinner or whatever, and they're like, we are all going for a run tomorrow. We are all doing this. We are all going sugar-free. And you're like, I'm 9 years old. Why am I a part of this? Why? Because I ate food. Why am I being punished? Why do I have to run off this food that I ate? I don't understand. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. And it's so many people, and they don't even realize how problematic it is or what it is instilling in their children. It's like, that's the big issue, right? Is it's so normalized. Eating disorders in general are not only so normalized, but they are actively encouraged to the point where people do not think that they're doing anything wrong. They truly do not realize the harm that they're doing or the like bad messages they are teaching and enforcing like in their kids. And it's so upsetting and so frustrating. That brings me to the category 2 of almond parents, which are the more passive way of enforcing their diet culture and such on their kids. And that is when they're not directly targeting you. They're not saying to you like, you have to eat this, you have to eat that, you shouldn't eat this. They're not saying that. It's about what they do and say around you, but they're not including you. So it's okay. They're not doing anything wrong. It's a do as I say, not as I do kind of situation. But a lot of the time they're not even saying that. They're kind of doing it deliberately to like passively push it onto you. And they know what they're doing a lot of the time. And I'll give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. So like there's this one that is me versus almond mum final boss, and they're eating like French toast with sausages and potatoes and eggs, and their mom across the table has 3 slices of tomato. And then you have this one that says, you have almond moms, I have an almond dad. He's been a 50-kilometer bike ride, taking the dog on an 8-mile run, and it's only 9 a.m. He's just about to eat a bowl of chopped tomatoes, one piece of bread, and has said, I won't need to eat for the rest of the day now. And it's so frustrating and so upsetting, because these are the things that they are like inadvertently teaching you. And again, I know that the people who are uploading these are adults, so at this point in their lives they're like past the point of being influenced by their parents' behavior, but again, that's not entirely true. And also a lot of the time they are growing up in households where this is in fact occurring. And the other one of these that's also really common is along the same lines as that last one of like, you know, going out and eating a piece of cake and they're like, oh, I won't have to eat till dinner because I've had one piece of cake. And it's, you know, it's passively enforcing shame on you, because now if you feel hungry, you feel like bad, right? Like you feel shame for wanting to eat again. You feel shame for how much you are eating. And that comes down to the attitude they have around food and how they say these things and how they talk about food, and also down to outside pressure as well. Like society tells you to watch what you eat, to watch what you weigh. It's like you've got that from everywhere. So then when you're getting it inside your home in that way as well, it's really just like hammering in all of that outside conditioning and making you feel ashamed of what you are consuming. Again, I know that they're not like enforcing this on their kids. They're not being like, I'm eating 3 tomatoes, so you only have to eat 3 tomatoes. They're not even necessarily saying like, oh my God, you're gonna eat all of that, but you still pick up on it and you still learn from it, right? This is where I am impacted personally in a way that like I didn't even really realize until somewhat recently, the role in which my own mother played in my eating disorder and my relationship with food, because she has a bad relationship with food and she didn't want that for me and my sister. Her mother died because of her relationship with food, and so that's always been something she's been cautious of and something she never wanted for us. But because of my mom's relationship with food, because of her mom's relationship with food, she didn't really know what she was doing or how to go about it, and she didn't really realized that she was struggling. And so she tried to, the food rules we had was very much like, you know, eat what you want, when you want, listen to your body, do what you want, like that. It was very much like do what you want. However, because of that, firstly, she didn't know anything about nutrition. We didn't learn anything really about nutrition other than what we learned at school. But also on top of that, she was still acting in a way that we were picking up on, like she never ate dinner, or, you know, she would eat a very, like a small portion of food and be like, oh, I don't have to eat for the rest of the day. Oh, did you see what I ate during the day? I don't need to eat dinner. I was picking at it while I was cooking. Oh, I ate a big lunch that we obviously like didn't see. And then talking badly about herself and her body in front of us and like enforcing that, especially there came a point where she was referring to herself as being big in like a negative way when she wasn't, but I was. And so it kind of is hypocritical when she's like, I look this way and I don't like it. You look that way and you look good. And I understand that because that is an internal struggle that I have. I don't voice that. Especially to impressionable children, right? It's such an interesting one. And like, I've had conversations with my mother about this recently because I've done a lot of healing and I've done a lot of growth. She's acknowledging that she has a problem now, you know, and like we've had a lot of conversations, a lot of arguments about the way she talks about food, about the way, you know, we kind of butt heads over it, because it did have an impact on me, because I saw that, you know, you could skip meals and it was okay to skip meals. I saw to like look at my body negatively and speak negatively about myself. I saw that like eating one piece of cake meant no sweets for the rest of the day. Like I learned all of these things, although they weren't enforced on me. In fact, the opposite was trying to be enforced on me. It was very easy to apply what she was doing rather than what she was saying, because actions speak louder than words. That is a saying for a reason. You know, you can't be a parent and be like, do as I say, not as I do, because children are sponges. We pick up on what you're doing. We pick up on what you're doing and what you're saying, and we especially pick up on how you are treating yourself, because we learn from you. Kids learn from their parents. And so it is very difficult for you to instill values on your children if you don't actually believe them and if you are not actually following them. I think parents just need to learn to take a bit more accountability and like reflect on their own actions and acknowledge that you can't have one set of rules for yourself and a different set of rules for your children, right? And I say all of this, and I do not at all want to say that my eating disorder was my mother's fault. That is not true. I am just saying that, you know, it played a role in what was a much larger issue, right? There was a lot more that went into it than that just did have some sort of impact in it, right? But for other people, their eating disorder does very much rely pretty much exclusively on the way their parents treat them and treat food and have rules in their houses. And I know a lot of people who grew up in households where their parents were quite restrictive with their food and what they were and weren't allowed to eat and the way that they spoke about their food and what that meant they stocked their cupboards with, etc. And I knew friends like that who ended up in hospital with eating disorders due to that behavior, due to their parents like doing Weight Watchers and being like, we're doing Weight Watchers, due to parents talking badly about themselves and like barely eating and their kids just like following those patterns because they were absorbing that and learning from that, right? And because these parents are already doing that, they might not notice to call it out because they don't want to acknowledge that they have a problem, or you learn to be sneaky about it. And it all just revolves around this idea of shame and eating being bad or specific foods being bad. And it's just not something we should be feeling any shame about. There are so many factors that go into eating disorders and just having bad relationships with your body and with food, and we just really don't need it coming from inside the house. And I understand that, you know, parents went through shit. And it's not fair that happened, and we live in a society and we all learn different things differently, and like, you know, there's so much outside pressure, and it's horrible that it comes from inside our own homes as well, especially when, you know, because it is so normalized, so many parents don't even realize that what they're doing is a problem. And in fact, a lot of people now, due to the current rise in eating disorder culture, there are a lot of people who are now saying they wish they had an almond mom, or they will be an almond mom. Like, there is this one TikTok that said, low-key can't wait to be an almond mom and not gentle parent my child. And there are comments like, I wish I had an almond mom. My family eats so much junk and processed food. It's disgusting. I wish I had one. I love it. And she raised 2 almond daughters. Unfortunately, I will be an almond mom. And these comments have like thousands of likes. That initial TikTok of low-key can't wait to be an almond mom has 54,000 likes, and it's just so upsetting because like almond mom straight up is just another word for mother with an eating disorder, and then almond daughter is just a word for child with an eating disorder. And so like being like I can't wait to be an almond mom is like literally just being like I can't wait to give my child an eating disorder, and that's so fucked up. It's ridiculous. I don't know if these people mean to say crunchy mom, which is separate. That is a different thing. That is bad in its own way. I've made other videos about that. I'll come back and do another one later. But a crunchy mom is more like orthorexia, whereas an almond mom is more like anorexia, right? It's like restrictive in different ways. It's restrictive as in like no food dyes, no nothing non-organic. Everything has to be organic and yada yada yada. Like there's that. That's a crunchy mom. Almond mom is the almond mom. It's the mom who is like, oh, you're hungry? Suck on an almond, right? Like there's a difference between those two things. I don't know if they're just getting confused. Either way, it's bad. But like almond mom to me is like, I feel like it's very, very obvious what it is, right? Like it's incredibly obvious that it's just restrictive eating disorders. Whereas crunchy moms, I at least understand how some people get there and view that as like good, even though it's restrictive in a different manner. I have problems with it, think it's bad, don't think we should be striving for it. Again, I've spoken about it before, we'll speak about it again. But it's slightly less horrifying to say I'm going to be a crunchy mom than it is to say I'm going to be an almond mom. There is a different level of horror in those two statements. And so I am hoping that they're misunderstanding, because otherwise, holy shit, man, it's so fucked. It's so horrible because like, obviously we're at this point in society right now where, you know, there is a rise in eating disorder culture, and there has been a rise in, like, you know, weight loss pills and, you know, Ozempic. There are more of those, like, the heroin chic, right, is like making a comeback. And it's terrifying to see. It's so scary to see, because when these trends change, because unfortunately the female body is a trend and something that changes like the fucking wind as a way to control us. When it comes to like this specific body type, it is such a symbol of the times. The reason they want you to be so small and so frail is so you can't fight back, right? If you are focused on food and the way your body looks, you don't have enough time and energy to focus on anything else, especially if the way they're making you focus on food and the way they're making you focus on your body is to eat less and to make your body smaller. Because then you can't physically fight back, and also you do not have the capacity to even like mentally be fully there, right? Like you do not have the energy. If you are not eating enough food, you don't have energy. And when you are in the midst of a restrictive eating disorder, like you can't really focus on very many things. Your world is very small because there's such an intense focus on food. And that's where it's such a problem, is when food becomes like the center of your world, which is what happens, right? Which is what these almond mums and things are, is it's like so much of their life, like the importance is just on what is going into their body, what is coming out of their body, how much they are exercising, and what their bodies look like. And when that is the focus of your world, you're exactly where the like people in power want you, where the elite want you, right? Like you're giving money into these horrifically capitalistic places of like diet pills and healthy foods and all of that, you know, and you are focusing so much of your time and energy on how you look, on how other people look, and also you are weak, you can't fight back. And it's terrifying to see that this is where we are heading towards again. And also, if you look around at everything that's fucking happening, it makes so much sense that this is where they want us, right? We are at a point in like the political climate where we do need to be fighting back. People are angrier, people are rising up, people are at this breaking point. And it's not a coincidence that when we reach this like big climactic, like we are angry and we need to fight, that's when they decide to come out and be like, you should starve yourself. That's not a coincidence. That is very deliberate timing, right? Like that is completely on purpose, and we cannot lose sight of that fact. And it is very important to hold on to that. And I know I've gone off topic a little bit of almond mums and I've gone more onto like diet culture here, but it's just very important because a lot of people don't realize that they are suffering with eating disorders, or that they are falling into old habits or whatever, or like why we are told that we have to be in this position. And so I just really want to take a moment to remind everyone that that is why. It is to keep us submissive. And that is also why women are more directly targeted as well. It is to keep us submissive. It is to keep us shallow. You know, they tell us our worth is based off of our beauty and our bodies, and then they tell us our bodies have to be small and easily pliable. I'll tell you, one thing that really lit a fire under me in my recovery was when I realized why my abusive boyfriend wanted me to be smaller. When I realized why he encouraged my eating disorder and told me that he would leave me if I gained weight. When I realized that he wanted me small so that I was weak, so that I couldn't think straight, so that I couldn't fight back. As soon as I realized that, my recovery, I've never like wanted to relapse less in my life than when I had that realization. And so I need everyone to have that realization. The people who are telling you you have to be tiny are the people who just want to have power over you, and you don't want them to have power over you. Anyway, going back into the topic of the video, which is specifically the parents who are enforcing this, because society enforced it, now they're enforcing it. And I wanted to take a look at this one example, right? This is an almond mom who goes beyond just being an almond mom. This is just a straight up very abusive mother. But there are some examples of her, like the way she is being controlling and abusive is through controlling what her daughter could eat and how she looked, which I think is a really good example of how restriction and telling someone that they have to be small and you know, it's like a good display of what I mean by like eating disorders being enforced are a way to gain control and power. That is this video. It's very long, so I am going to cut it, but we're gonna talk about some of the main points as we go.
Before every family trip, my mother made me lose 6 pounds so I could eat in front of my family members. Every single time she let me out of the house to go out with friends for dinner or lunch, I always had to bring the receipt back so she saw what I ate and made sure it was healthy, like a salad. For my entire life until I left home when I was 16, I was never allowed to wear what I wanted to wear, and she would pick out my outfits for school, for trips. She would only sometimes, when I started getting older, let me wear crop tops, but it was only on the days where my abs were showing, and if I was up on the scale that day, then I couldn't wear them. Every single morning without fail, she weighed me from when I was like, 7 to 15, 16 when I ran away. And if I didn't get on the scale and I refused, she would scream at me and throw things at me for hours. And it would ruin the whole day. So I couldn't really say no.
Weighing your child for anything outside of like developmental or medical reasons is so unnecessary. In general, this is something that absolutely doesn't make sense to me. The fact that it is like really common to have like scales in your house and just like regularly weigh yourself, like that doesn't make sense. There is absolutely no point in that. There is no need for that, especially if you are weighing your child every day, especially if it's like a 7-year-old child and you're saying that she can't go on holiday unless she loses 6 pounds. It's astounding. Like there's no words for just the level of horror that exists within that statement, within all of that. And like here's the thing, and why scales don't make any sense, and why this whole thing is just a big load of manipulative bullshit, right? Is that scales and your weight mean nothing. They mean absolutely nothing. We all hold weight differently. For starters, we all are made differently. Also, like muscle weighs more than fat, so you can have two people who are the same height, and the one with abs is going to be heavier than the one with a bit of a tummy, right? Because muscle weighs more than fat. Not that that matters, it's just adding to the fact that this whole notion doesn't make any fucking sense and is more about keeping someone small and frail than it is about anything else. And I think like in general, just having a scale and needing to know how much you weigh, you don't need to know that. It's not beneficial. It's useful to know if your doctor needs to know like how much medication to give you, or like, you know, like for medical purposes, yes, it makes sense, but you do not need to be weighing yourself regularly. That does nothing for you. If you feel the need to weigh yourself regularly, you need to sort that out and do something about that, and maybe throw away your scales. This is my PSA to everyone. Get rid of your scales. Do it. Get rid of them. They're not doing you any good. They don't tell you anything. All they're doing is like enforcing lies and bullshit, right? Like you don't need to weigh yourself regularly, and you definitely do not need to be weighing your child outside of developmental and medical reasons, as previously stated. Going back to, again, like being like, you can't wear crop tops unless your abs are showing, and you have to lose 6 pounds before you go on holiday, and you have to look the specific way. That's bad all the time. Right? Like that's bad all the time. But to have that thought about a child it's so much worse, right? Like that is so much worse. And I want to say there is no reason for you to be doing this. Like there is absolutely no reason for you to be doing that. And there's no justifiable reason. But there are a few like reasons that these people have, right? Which are not justifiable and they are not okay, but they are their reasons. And we will get to that in a moment. I just need to share a little bit more of what she says.
Because she was convinced that drinking a lot of water makes you lose weight. So as I started getting older and like gaining natural weight as a growing preteen, she would force me to drink like bottles and bottles of those big Evian bottles every single day. And one time I actually drank so much and I was crying because my stomach hurt so much because of the water, and she forced me to keep drinking, and I threw it up all over her floor, and then she just stared at me and told me to clean it up and walked away. She told my whole entire family that I was allergic to sugar in the 2nd grade because she didn't want me gaining weight. Newsflash, I was never allergic to sugar. She just made that lie up so I wouldn't eat it, so I would stay skinny in 2nd grade.
This obsession with what your child weighs and what they eat and how small she is it's evil. That is evil. If you were that obsessed with your child's smallness, with their like body, you are just an evil person. Like no other way about it. As I said, like I mentioned before, that there is a reason for it, and that reason is just straight up, it's just control. It is just what I was talking about before in the way of society. If this mother keeps her small and frail, she can't fight back. If she is telling her that this is what's best for her, that she has to look a specific way, if she wants to be respected, if she wants to be loved, if she wants to be beautiful and accepted, like then she has to look this specific way, and looking that specific way means you have to weigh the specific amount. You have to be tiny and small in order to be valued and valid. It's just so she can continue to have this level of control over her, and it works. And these parents, these people are able to continue to manipulate and control people through doing this, especially when it's a parent, because that's your parent. They're meant to like love you and look after you and take care of you, and so you have this like trust and faith in them that they're doing what's best for you, because why wouldn't they? I'm really glad that this person realized how fucked up it was and ran away when she was 15 or 16. Like, that's incredible. I'm really proud of her and happy for her. But like, my dear God, it's so horrible, the things that people will do just to have power and control over people and over their kids.
Even though my brother and I were 9 months apart, we were raised like Irish twins. For some reason, he always had to have a lot more to eat, or he was allowed to have a lot more to eat than I was. I was given significantly smaller portions.
And this brings up fucked up, inexcusable reason number 2, which is just misogyny. it's just misogyny. This is just this mother doing the work of society and saying that women have to be small and frail and submissive, and they have to be desirable to men, and that means being weak. And then they will view you as worthy and beautiful and someone that they can accept and desire and love, because it's not being pushed on her son, right? Her son is being taught that he can do what he wants, he can eat what he wants, it's good. Growing boys need to eat food, but women have to be small, frail, and they're not supposed to eat. A good girl, a good woman doesn't eat, and that's what he should look for. That is what we should all be, you know, striving for and to be. There's a whole level of fucked upness in that in general, but it goes the extra mile when you realize this was all going on when she was like 7, like when she was like a young child. Because why are you so focused on the aesthetic of the body of a 7-year-old? Like, it's so horrifying. And it does start that young, right? Like, people are genuinely so obsessed with the bodies of children, and it's so creepy and so scary, because I don't know if they really realize it, right? Like, I don't know if they realize how fucking weird it is and how horrifying it is. Like, this mother obviously was aware she was being incredibly abusive and just a horrible person. But in general, I've seen posts and things in like the r/insane parents Reddits that I've like spoken about before, of like people being worried that their babies are fat, talking about putting their like 3-year-olds in workout classes because they're chubby and they want them to lose that weight, especially in relation to girls. It's horrifying. You just sit there in absolute like horror, because why are you so fixated on what your child's body looks like, right? Like, why is that important? Why does that matter? Because when we talk about the aesthetic of people's bodies, it is usually around desirability, right? Like, you have to look a certain way to be attractive. Who do you need your child to be desirable to? Who do you need them to be attractive to? Why does their body have to look a certain way in order to please you? You realize how fucking weird that is. And like it's even enforced in like clothing and in TV and in everything, right? Like there are baby clothes that say things for girls, obviously, that say things like, does this onesie make my butt look big? Which is horrifying. And then you watch TV and it's like kids shows, and these people in the shows are like kids, and they're being like, oh, do I look fat? Oh, that dress makes you look fat. I don't know if that's still happening on TV now, but it definitely was happening when I was a kid. You would like going back and watching like episodes of like Hannah Montana and like things like that. They would talk like that, and they're kids, and we were learning that from them. And like kids at school are bullying each other for the way that they look and for their bodies and stuff. I was bullied relentlessly as a child for being fat. That was another large contributing factor to me getting an eating disorder, because it's learned, right? And that learning starts so young. There are like 7-year-olds out there with like restrictive eating disorders. There are like 9-year-olds with bulimia. Like this is something that is very real, and it impacts people of every age. And I know eating disorders are about more than just the way your body looks. You can have an eating disorder and it not even have to do with how your body looks. It doesn't even have to come with like body dysmorphia. You can have an eating disorder without that. But for a lot of people, especially women, it does include that like element of the relationship you have with your body and how you view yourself. And like there are a lot of kids who get eating disorders because of the way they are treated by their friends, by their family, because of the media that we consume, because of how bodies are talked about. And it starts so young, and it so often starts within the home and with parents teaching good habits, but those good habits not being good at all for a child. And for so many parents like watching their kids weight and being like, oh, you're getting a bit chubby, oh, you gotta lose that belly, oh, they're children. Why does it matter? Like there's a difference. I know that there is a difference between being like unhealthy and like, you know, there is like a child obesity thing that exists, right? And that isn't healthy, and that is sure impacting kids' health. When it comes to, if you are not directly involved with that person, you don't get a say in that, because you don't know. There can be a person, doesn't matter their age, who is fat and still healthy, right? And there can be people who are thin and not healthy. You have to understand that, right? And like someone getting chubby is not then for you to come in and be like, oh, you've got to lose that tummy, my darling 9-year-old child. Like that's not an okay thing to say. That's not setting up a good relationship with your body. That is not being healthy. That is focusing not on health, but on aesthetic. And that's the problem. That's the difference, right? Like there's a difference between wanting to be healthy and have like a good relationship with food and with your body, and then also just controlling your diet and revolving what you eat and how you exercise because of the way your body looks, right? That is the difference. There's a difference between being healthy and wanting to look a certain way. Very, very important things to distinguish. Ultimately, there are so many layers to this conversation and to this issue, like to these almond parents. Like there's so many layers, because diet culture and eating disorders and body expectations such are like so massive, and they come from all over, and it is all just a big mush. There are so many layers, and you know, because of that, it is important to have a good and safe home environment where you are taught good and healthy things, and you are taught to have a good relationship with your body, with your food, and with yourself. And that is why the almond parent thing is so distressing, because, you know, all it's doing is like making it hard for kids in a world that's already so difficult, and they deserve to have that safe space. And as I said, like, I understand that these parents are suffering themselves. They're either like that last parent who is just abusive and wanting to control her child, or they themselves are suffering due to their own, you know, upbringing and the way that they are impacted by society. Again, I understand that and I sympathize with it. And I think if you are a parent, you have to be self-aware. You have to acknowledge what you are going through. And when you are, you know, teaching your child things, you have to question why you are doing that. right? Like if you're going to set rules, you have to ask why you are doing that. You have to have an understanding of the values that you are instilling in your child, and you have to have a solid reason as to why you are instilling them. You have to question yourself. You have to question everything, because it is your job as a parent to be there for your child and to make them happy and to keep them healthy. And you have to constantly evaluate what you are doing and question all your decisions. Right? I think that just comes with being a parent, and so many people just like don't do that. So many people are just parents and they don't really care about what that means. They just kind of go on living their lives as they were before, but now they have a kid. It's not how this works. That's not how that works. You have to like, you are now a teacher before you are anything else. Your kid is a sponge. Everything you do, they are learning from. So you have to be the best version of yourself. You have to be the person you want your kids to grow up to be. If something makes you miserable, maybe work on that so that you don't pass that misery on to your child too. Raise them into the adults you want to see in the world. Yeah, and it can't be like this is just how the world works, you know, like I want my child to be thin and beautiful because then they'll do well in the world and I just want them to be successful. No, because you should be raising a child who will work to change that, right? Like if everyone stops raising their kids to fit the current expectations and the way society currently works, we can have a better society. We can make things better. You just have to raise your kids better. Don't raise them with morals that you hate in a way that, you know, you hate just because you think that's how the world is. Raise kids for the world you want it to be, and then the world will be a better place. And like people like to say, oh, I don't want my kid to suffer, I don't want to make it hard for them. Teach your kids good values and to be the best version of themselves, to, you know, kind to themselves, right? And treat themselves well. Raise them to be happy. And while you are doing that, you can learn how to do that for yourself as well, because it is never too late to unlearn bad behavior, and you deserve to be happy as well. Be the light you want to see in the world and raise your child to know that there is good out there. I hope that, you know, this video was at all helpful or comforting or anything. I always get like really ranty when it comes to this topic because, you know, as an eating disorder sufferer, I know how much it fucking sucks, right? And I just want to help out in whatever way I can. And so whenever I do these videos, I try to do them a little bit differently because, you know, I need to make the same points because sometimes people need to hear things multiple times for it to go through. But also I need to give like a slightly different perspective and add a little bit more and try to make it make sense for people and bring like both comfort and also hopefully some sort of healing, maybe some sort of breakthrough moment. Kids who have almond parents or to an almond parent who may be watching, I just hope that I'm able to reach anyone that needs to be reached. So yeah, I hope this brought you any sort of comfort at all. Know that you're not alone. Know that like it is okay to eat. Food is not bad, and there is absolutely no shame in listening to your body and in just enjoying things. Deserve it. You deserve to exist. You deserve to take up space. That's it really. There's nothing more to say. You deserve to exist. You deserve to eat. You deserve to take up space. You are perfectly fine the way that you are. You do not need to change for anyone, and you certainly don't need to fit this like small little box of desirability that is just made up and fake. Yeah, so thank you for watching. A huge thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons: Polar Bee, Sienna, Alicia, Marielle, Bree, Bay the Trucker, Chastity, Beckett, Prismatic Petey, Sushi Kawaii, Phil the Duck, Jessie, River, Queen Glimmer, Ella, Mr. Noodle, Radsack, Knitting Menace, Chris, Ellie, Alexis, and Bobby. I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah. When you close your eyes, you replace the darkness.